Dear Infinity car owners, I'm back again with the gangster scams trending online.
Today, we continue with the Korean crime series Hostage.
Many people think of Korea as having only 19 plus restricted with
films.
overly explicit and realistic camera work and plots, until I watched this shockingly bold film.
I didn't truly understand what a benchmark crime movie looks like.
I must say their directors really dare to shoot anything.
Even after 30 or 40 years, this film remains the pinnacle of Asian cinema. And this movie, based on crime,
As its main theme,
has no weak points in plot or character design. All the motivations and logic are seamless. Only one big question remains. Which version is the remake of the other? Today, let's follow Mufing's 1000
to fully
word
understand the film in one go,
and just how explosive Hwang Jungming's
how
performance
phenomenal is his acting.
is the Tathagata headed west.
Actor Hwang was once a top-tier Korean actor dominating the industry.
He had just starred in a global blockbuster, New World, and other massive hits like The Deal that went viral worldwide. His popularity was at an all-time high. However, just after finishing an interview that day, he was about to drive home,
When suddenly he found two strangers lying on his car.
The men were also stunned to see Hwang walk out,
They couldn't believe they had run into a big star.
but Hwang didn't fuss about it. He just politely reminded them,
You shouldn't climb onto someone else's car.
but the man's reply left Hwang speechless.
Utterly awkward.
Because they were sitting. At that moment, another man walked up.
And reached out to shake Hwang's hand. Hwang saw his hands were covered in black rice, but still remained composed and polite.
Refusing to look down on anyone.
So he shook the man's hand out of courtesy. But what Hwang didn't expect was,
The guy had no intention of leaving. Instead, he aggressively insisted on taking a photo
when
with
Hwang
Hwang.
refused,
He began interrogating him about which female star he dated. By this point, Hwang was clearly angry.
he couldn't understand why the guy was so unreasonable and kept pushing his luck.
After cursing the man out, a bald man nearby came over to provoke Hwang.
But seeing that they had more people,
Hwang didn't retaliate. Seeing this, the leader of the group turned and left.
little did Hwang know from that moment on, he had already been marked as a target. So just as he was about to reach home,
A small truck suddenly appeared in front of him.
3 masked men jumped out of the vehicle.
Without question, they were here specifically for Hwang.
They came to kidnap him on the spot.
Although in the movies, Hwang fights like a beast,
A movie is still just a movie. In real life, he couldn't fight off so many with just a fist.
he was thrown against the wall by force.
Then he was knocked out with a stun gun.
When he woke up again, he was already in a completely
Unfamiliar room. The 2 people in front of him were shocked to see Hwang too. Flout daughter-in-law? You stirred things up.
just as the woman was acting sweet with Hwang.
She suddenly pulled at the tarp on the floor. Beneath it was another kidnapped woman. Seeing her face,
Hwang recognized the woman. She was the recently missing Mijin.
at that moment, the bald man approached Hwang and gave him 2 hard slaps.
Clearly, Hwang now realized he had truly been kidnapped, not just part of some prank show. His heart sank to the bottom,
Then the bald man kicked Hwang.
straight to the ground. All the surrounding kidnappers
Closed in,
but Hwang.
still didn't know why they had kidnapped him. At that moment, the boss, Mr. Choi, stepped forward.
And after he spoke,
He had his underlings lift Hwang up and declared that by PM tonight,
Hwang must give him a sum of money.
otherwise he would end up like the man in his phone video. After speaking, he showed Hwang the video. It showed a man
Who failed to pay on time.
he had only bought 50 million won.
In the end, he was shot dead with a homemade gun, right on the spot. Hwang gritted his teeth in fear at the sight. At this point, he fully realized,
These people weren't just some pranksters.
after showing Hwang the video, Boss tried the other woman in the room, Mijin, and tied her up.
Then aimed the gun at her to execute her as well, because she couldn't come up with ransom either.
Hwang couldn't bear to watch.
Her die right in front of him. He offered to help pay her ransom, but said he could only afford up to 500 million won. Boss Choi flew into a rage when he heard that. He believed Hwang must have far more money than that.
He thought Hwang was mocking him, but Hwang explained
That there's a daily transfer limit. He could only move 500 million before PM.
that was the maximum he could get. After hearing this explanation, Boss Choi stopped pressing him. He fired a warning shot into the air to scare Hwang, then left the room. Meanwhile, on the police side,
They were also investigating Maichin's disappearance case.
the man previously killed by Boss Choi had only paid 50 million won.
His body was then chopped into 49 pieces and delivered to his family.
The person the police arrested now.
Was the man who had sold the small truck to Boss Choi.
But what the police didn't know was, the famous actor Hwang Young-min.
Was also in their hands.
And back at the hideout, Huang discovered
There was another kidnapper present.
it turned out to be one of his own fans
The chubby kidnapper was a die-hard fan
of the film New World. He demanded Huang act out a scene on the spot,
the elevator fight to recreate that iconic shot-for-shot scene. At first, Huang didn't want to do it.
and just gave a half-hearted performance, but the chubby guy wasn't satisfied. He started waving a knife wildly in front of Huang.
Seeing this, Huang had no
But
choice
to
follow his instructions exactly. Suddenly, is the Tathagata headed west? At that moment, the bald man stormed in angrily when he learned they hadn't gotten the money,
Huang couldn't help but smile inside.
because he knew very well.
With large transfers, bank cooperation
All he
was
needed to
required
do
was lure them to his home, and the police would be alerted and come to rescue him. And sure enough, things went exactly as planned. The kidnappers couldn't resist the temptation of 500 million
But
baht.
before leaving, destroyed the place with explosives. He also gave orders to his men if they didn't return by PM. Kill both Huang and Mijin.
Clearly, he anticipated trouble on this outing.
As the engine roared off in the distance,
Mijin quickly apologized to Huang,
but he replied, the internet was now flooded with posts about
and
him.
his sister had already called the police,
The police were definitely out there investigating.
but only if they made it past tomorrow alive.
Would they have a chance of getting out safely?
So the two had to find a way to save themselves.
But before they could come up with a plan, the chubby guy suddenly charged at Mijin. From his expression, it was clear he was seriously thinking about forcing himself on her.
In the nick of time, a shrill scream echoed from down the corridor. It instantly got the guy's attention. He excitedly rushed toward the sound.
Looking into the room, he secretly swallowed his saliva. At that moment, Huang spotted a snowblower shot. He immediately signaled Mijin to kick it over to him. But to his dismay, she turned out to be a clumsy teammate.
God,
Go. Now.
after finally convincing Mijin,
It turned out her kicking skills were no better than a certain tribe's.
Huang had no choice but to move closer. The sound of the chair scraping echoed through the warehouse.
Mijin was instantly scared stiff,
Huang tried to pick up the piece of glass,
but he used too much force and fell hard onto the ground. To make matters worse, footsteps suddenly echoed from the corridor.
Huang quickly tried a keep-up maneuver.
He attempted several times to get back up.
As the distance between them narrowed, Huang used every ounce of strength he had. Just as the female kidnapper entered, he managed to sit
But as the
upright.
two kidnappers finished their fun time, they lost the chance to cut the ropes. In desperation, Huang told the bald guy that he had a press conference coming up.
If his agent couldn't contact him,
They definitely realized something was wrong. and
though the
called
bald
police.
man was reluctant, he eventually took out his phone. But since it was a strange number, the call was immediately declined by the agent. Huang quickly gave the number of a close friend.
He told Park Sang-woon that something urgent had come up and he couldn't make it to the press conference later.
Ah? Ah? How did you get to that level? Just threw money at it like I did. Same as me.
That side's always been
It's
steady.
rare to see such powerful team builds.
You haven't even been there.
What about that strong rebound?
You see, even your guys are all making mistakes.
Seeing the bald man begin to doubt him, Huang quickly said something unexpected had happened
Then
at
he
home
asked Park Sang-woon,
to apologize on his behalf and
Choi
Choi Chi-Chi.
sensing something off.
The bald man snatched the phone and interrogated him. Huang panicked. He explained that he had already stood up. Those two reporters once before.
That's why he had especially asked his friend to
Meanwhile,
apologize for him.
the police arrived at the prison for investigation. From a guard statement,
They learned that the bald man
had always followed Bus Choi during his time
While working
boxing
in
mines. He had once used explosives to threaten the general
On
manager.
top of that, his criminal charge was also kidnapping. All the signs pointed to the fact
That the mastermind behind the kidnapping was likely Bus Choi, so the police immediately launched an operation
but
to
when they
arrest
entered the
him.
room, what they saw was a corpse. Based on ID verification.
The deceased was Bus Choi's elderly mother.
Meanwhile, seeing that there was still no movement around,
Huang pretended to have a heart attack. He asked the fat guy to go buy him heart medicine.
but although the chubby man looked intimidating,
He was actually very timid. He didn't dare disobey Bus Choi's orders and leave the room. Just then, the bald man suddenly walked in with a phone.
he immediately wrapped a rope around Huang's neck.
Just as he was about to suffocate, Boss Choi's voice came through the phone.
He had just torn the room apart, but couldn't find his so-called Yuden.
Realizing they were serious about killing him, Hwang quickly revealed where Yuden was hidden. Meanwhile, on Park
He
Sung-won's
finally
side,
got through to Hwang's manager,
but he was told,
that those two people were actors playing cops in a new film.
based on his years of knowing Hwang. The manager immediately realized something was wrong.
He dared not delay for a second.
He rushed to Hwang's house and opened the door.
Seeing the place completely trashed, he immediately called the police.
Soon, the police located the kidnappers through surveillance footage. At the same time,
The chubby guy suddenly rushed over to find the bald man.
after the three of them entered the warehouse,
They found Hwang Yamin looking dazed, drooling all over, twitching.
pretending to have a heart attack.
At first, the bald man didn't take it seriously,
After all, he was a blue
Pretending
dragon.
to be
Sick
sick
was too easy for him.
but just as he was about to leave, the fat guy
At this
stopped
point,
him. Hwang had already lost control of his bladder.
Mijin
and
quickly
bowels.
grabbed the bald man. He didn't want to lose.
the huge sum of money that was almost
Seeing
in his
Hwang
hands.
barely hanging on, the bald man finally decided to go by the medicine.
Meanwhile, Hwang had already fainted,
The fat guy was completely panicked. The woman told him to let go of Hwang's hand.
but a fool is still a fool. He quickly took a knife and cut the ropes.
Hwang immediately collapsed to the ground. The woman told the fat guy to perform CPR and chest compressions.
After some fumbling, the fat guy began mouth to mouth.
But in the very next second, Hwang knocked the fat guy out.
He then cut the tape of his legs and freed Mijin from the chains. After escaping the warehouse, they found the main door was locked.
Just then, Mijin came out holding the homemade shotgun. The three locked eyes.
Unfortunately, the bald man returned by car at that
Hwang
moment.
seized the moment and rushed forward to grab
As they
the gun.
wrestled for it,
The shotgun was thrown aside.
in a crucial moment, Mijin didn't hesitate.
She picked up the shotgun and fired.
Unfortunately, she accidentally shot herself in
The
the
air
stomach.
instantly fell silent. When the bald man opened the door, Mijin had already collapsed.
Seeing this, Hwang quickly grabbed the woman and fled.
The bald man and the fat guy gave close chase.
After gaining a bit of distance,
Hwang told Mijin to hide behind a large rock.
he would draw the pursuers away. But things didn't go as planned. Mijin was quickly discovered by the bald man.
Now, her fate was uncertain.
Meanwhile, Hwang was also spotted by the fat guy. Why so nervous? Until to get it. Why so nervous?
Don't tell me, you like me.
To get that of the shit.
You sure is great. You can sleep anywhere.
Meanwhile,
Instantly. After Boss Joy got the password, he entered it twice, but both times it was wrong. That's when he realized he had been tricked.
He tried calling his gang members, but no one picked up. And as bad luck would have it,
Just as Boss Joy exited the alley, he was stopped by arriving police officers.
he thought he had covered his tracks perfectly.
But the police recognized him immediately. Just then, a taxi sped over out of nowhere and hit the police officer, sending him flying. Boss Joy jumped into the getaway car, and they began a wild escape. The police gave chase immediately.
Calling for backup on their radios. A full-blown car chase had begun.
The loud noise drew attention from bystanders.
Spectators swarmed in to watch the drama
No matter
unfold.
how much the police tried to
They
stop them.
couldn't stop the public's curiosity.
Just as the police were about to subdue the kidnappers, a bomb was suddenly thrown out. That instantly killed the crowd's mood. So Boss Choi calmly stepped out
A nearby officer spotted him.
and immediately gave chase.
When they reached an intersection,
Boss Choi suddenly vanished. After shaking off the police, Boss Choi changed clothes and blended into the crowd. Meanwhile, his accomplice was arrested. There were still 8 hours left until PM,
the police immediately began interrogating Wang
but
Fei.
unexpectedly, the guy was tough as nails. He bit off his own tongue right in front of the police. Meanwhile, Juan finally regained consciousness.
He tore off a piece of his clothing.
and used it to dress his wound.
While escaping, he happened to spot a house in the distance.
That glimpse gave him hope.
When he reached the house, he saw an old man working outside, so he approached and asked to borrow the phone to call the
Juan
police.
limped into the house.
But as soon as he picked up the phone,
He realized he had walked into a trap.
he stood up, ready to get out. But then Huang realized the old man had locked the door from inside.
The old man then pulled out a phone and called Officer Pu, who was in a meeting. He claimed
that he had caught a thug who often bullied him. Officer Pigu thought the old man was just rambling, so he brushed him off and hung up. As the old man tried to call again, the thug who often bullied him showed up.
The bald man asked the old man about Juan's whereabouts.
Having been bullied by him so many times, the old man naturally didn't tell the truth,
So the bald man tried to barge in and search the room.
but he was chased out by the old man.
Inside the room, Juan was gasping in fear.
Then the old man opened the door, only to be knocked out cold by the crooked man.
Soon after, the media began reporting on the kidnappers Choi and the bald man. The fat guy panicked when he saw it, thinking he would be the next one caught.
At that moment, female kidnapper Mijin was critically wounded. She and the bald man were lovers,
The bald man begged Boss Choi.
to give him his share from the last kidnapping, so he could take his girlfriend to the hospital. But Boss Choi didn't care whether his teammates lived or died.
He only kept promising huge rewards
He said that as long as the bald man got the phone to Huang.
and got the ransom, he would immediately share the money so the bald guy could take his girlfriend to the hospital.
At this point, the bald man couldn't hold back
he
anymore.
cursed Choi for being a backstabbing liar. The old tricks no longer worked on him.
While Boss Choi was waiting at an underground bank to launder the money, he called the fat guy instead. The fat guy obeyed orders and placed the phone right next to Huang's ear.
Choi
Boss Choi used Huang's family as leverage to force the password out
After
of
a
him.
brief pause,
Huang had a sudden idea. He said to go surrender at his house entrance, because police would definitely be stationed there. He tricked the fat guy into thinking that
Boss Choi
was going to turn himself in and call to have them released. Don't forget to take a picture of him.
after the meal. Let's eat. Eat. As soon as the bald man appeared,
Huang's plan instantly fell apart. As soon as he heard the call was from Boss Choi, he smashed the fat guy's phone on the spot
he didn't care anymore. He just wanted Boss Choi to come.
and give him the ransom he was owed at exactly PM. Only 2 hours remain until the PM deadline.
At this point, the police finally located the kidnapper's truck by tracing the license plate.
They could identify the kidnapper's hideout,
Just as squad leader Guang Yu.
led officers to investigate. Something
Totally unexpected happened.
Boss Choi suddenly showed up and surrendered himself. Everyone was stunned. Until Boss Choi raised his hands behind his back. He planned to avoid punishment by pinning everything on himself,
He'd get no more than 10 years in prison and a monthly welfare payment of 3 million won.
as long as they agreed to these two conditions.
He'd immediately,
Reveal where Huang and Mijin were being held.
since the truck route couldn't be traced in blind spots and there was no surveillance footage, the leader had no choice but to agree.
He brought Boss Choi along to find them.
Once the police departed with Boss Choi,
Other nearby stations also sent officers to help. At that moment,
the old man who had locked up Juan earlier returned, but the police still didn't want to listen to him.
they thought he was just mentally unstable.
Meanwhile, on the other side, female kidnapper Mijin succumbed to her injuries.
She ultimately passed away.
The bald man unleashed all his anger on Huang.
If it weren't for him, his girlfriend wouldn't have
Just
died.
as the bald man was about to finish off Huang, Huang suddenly let out a few loud shouts. Let me go.
Who's the thoughts of God? The fat guy believed what Boss Choi said, and ended up releasing both Huang and Mijin. He hadn't killed anyone. He had only done all of this to raise money to pay for his mother's
Huang
treatment.
told the fat guy to leave with them.
But suddenly, the second shot hit a fuse box.
Huang quickly hid with Mijin. Meanwhile, Boss Choi had already led the police to the entrance.
When knocking failed, they decided to break in, but they nearly tripped over a wire.
When they lifted the top, they discovered
The place was full of homemade bombs. Turns out this was Boss Choi's real plan. This wasn't a place to keep hostages. It was a warehouse filled with explosives.
originally, they planned that if things fell apart, they'd bring the hostages here and die together. On the other side, the bald man quickly found Huang. Just then, a female officer broke through the door. The bald man immediately took Huang hostage and confronted her. Huang told the police to protect Mijin and allowed himself to be taken away by the bald
He then
man.
forced Huang into a car and threatened him to drive. But just as they reached the front gate,
Boss Choi blocked the way. The out-of-control vehicle crashed into a wall. The police who arrived were suppressed by Boss Choi's firepower. He then fired again, killing the bald man in the passenger seat.
just as he aimed for the next shot,
Huang floored the gas and rammed him. The car crashed into a wall, breaking Choi's nose.
but Boss Choi remained surprisingly unscathed,
He shot and wounded a charging officer.
then engaged in hand-to-hand combat with the female officer.
Huang tried to drive off again.
But the engine wouldn't start.
He saw the female officer outside being overpowered by Choi, so he grabbed the gun from the passenger seat to fight back.
but only managed to shoot Choi in the arm. The two then fell into a brutal brawl again.
Huang was soon overpowered.
But faced with death, Huang's will to survive erupted
He rolled over successfully.
and tightly strangled Choi's neck. Wounded in the shoulder, Choi gradually lost strength
The two collapsed to the ground together. Huang used every ounce of strength.
and didn't let go even as Choi stopped breathing.
By the time police reinforcements arrived, Huang's body had already stiffened. It took the police great effort to separate them.
Although Huang and Mijin were successfully rescued,
For Huang, it left a deep psychological trauma.
he eventually disappeared from the public eye.